Whether they like it or not, they're never getting rid of it.
With the Fantastic Four First Steps now officially released by both Marvel Studios and the Walt Disney Company, we already have actor Pedro Pascal making things worse, far worse than they really need to be, by getting overly critical and striking back at both fans and critics that are bringing up box office debates, box office arguments
A lot
about
of Marvel movies. If you're in the top 5, you're doing.
Now, this isn't one of the greatest Marvel movies to me.
Look, this is not a life-changing, the MCU has been saved, this movie paid off my car, this movie cured my depression. It's not that. It's really not.
Sometimes I felt like I was in a Reed Richards science class, which is not what I really wanted to be in.
Pedro Pascal is firing back. He's getting very tired of everything when it comes to critics. He's getting very angry over fans, talking about the box office, talking about specific characters in the film and how things were changed here and there.
Pedro Pascal was untouchable, the internet's favorite dad, the king of meme culture, the man who could juggle lightsabers in The Mandalorian, hunt narcos in Colombia, and charm every red carpet from Cannes to Comic-Con. So when Marvel announced Pedro as the new face of Fantastic Four, fans went into a frenzy. They thought it was a perfect match. But fast forward to now, that same fanbase is tearing him apart, and Hollywood insiders are whispering something no one thought they'd hear. Pedro Pascal will never work again.
Now, look, on one end, you're going to have a lot of fans saying that this is a very weak or somewhat weak box office performance for the Fantastic Four. Others are going to say that it's a very strong box office opening.
The movie flopped harder than anyone predicted. Millions poured into what was supposed to be Marvel's next phase-defining masterpiece. And instead, it bombed. Hard. And guess who's being blamed for the whole thing? Not the screenwriters, not the producers, not even the crumbling Marvel formula. Pedro Pascal himself. Studio execs are distancing themselves, PR teams have gone silent, and rumors are swirling that Pedro's name has been quietly blacklisted, from streaming platforms to blockbuster casting tables. So how did one of Hollywood's most beloved actors go from universally adored to industry pariah in the span of a single film? Strap in, because this isn't just a flop, this is a full-blown cancellation. And what happened behind the scenes will shock you.
Film where I genuinely started to feel like I was bored, and I noticed I was bored.
No, we've actually really enjoyed being with each other. He's one of my favorite people.
Whether they like it or not, they're never getting rid of me.
For years, Pedro Pascal could do no wrong. He wasn't just a talented actor, he was a walking cultural moment. From his breakout performance as Oberyn Martell in Game of Thrones to leading roles in Narcos and The Mandalorian, Pedro had built a rare kind of Hollywood reputation, beloved by fans, respected by peers, and trusted by studios. He wasn't just another A-lister, he was a meme, a moment, and a movement, all wrapped into one effortlessly charming package. So when Marvel Studios announced that Pedro Pascal would take on the role of Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic, in the new Fantastic Four reboot, the internet exploded with excitement. Headlines gushed about how Marvel finally got it right. Fan art flooded social media within minutes, and even the skeptics seemed cautiously optimistic. After all, if anyone could breathe life into a franchise that had crashed and burned more than once, it was Pedro. But behind the scenes, there were already concerns. Marvel had been struggling to regain momentum after a string of underwhelming projects. Box office fatigue was real, audience trust was fading, and casting Pedro, while initially seen as a slam dunk, was quietly raising eyebrows among insiders who questioned whether he was the right fit, or simply a last-ditch effort to keep the franchise afloat. At the time, no one imagined it would backfire this badly. But when the cameras stopped rolling and the early screenings began, the enthusiasm started to crack. Fast. When Fantastic Four finally hit theaters, expectations were sky high. Marvel had poured hundreds of millions into the reboot, calling it a new era and the future of the MCU. But within 48 hours of release, those hopes came crashing down. The reviews were brutal. Rotten Tomatoes scores plummeted into the 30s. Social media erupted, not with excitement, but with confusion and disappointment. The film wasn't just bad, it was a disaster. Audiences slammed the script as lifeless, the pacing as off, and the tone as wildly inconsistent. But it was Pedro Pascal's performance that took the most unexpected hit. Critics described him as disengaged, oddly distant, and unbelievably miscast. One reviewer even wrote, "It's like he didn't want to be there, and maybe he didn't." Fans who had once worshipped him now questioned if he was ever the right choice at all. And while the movie had plenty of flaws to go around, The blame didn't get evenly distributed. The studio's silence spoke volumes. As box office numbers tanked and the film was quietly buried beneath Marvel's other misfires, one name kept surfacing in the backlash: Pedro Pascal. What happened next didn't go public, but insiders couldn't stay quiet for long. According to multiple anonymous sources, Marvel executives were livid behind closed doors. They reportedly blamed Pedro for refusing to commit fully to reshoots, showing up late to post-production meetings, and allegedly clashing with the director over creative decisions. One producer was even quoted off the record saying he thought he was bigger than the movie. He wasn't. Others claimed Pedro's growing fame had made him difficult to manage on set. Between juggling press for The Last of Us, voiceover work for The Mandalorian, and an ever-expanding schedule of endorsement deals, Pascal was said to be checked out. The final straw? Rumors suggest he skipped a critical final round of ADR, the voice dubbing sessions that often fix dialogue and pacing in big-budget films. For a studio already on edge after a string of disappointments, this was enough to ignite full-blown resentment. What had once been a mutually beneficial relationship began to unravel fast. The same studio that had proudly announced him as their Reed Richards was now allegedly leaking stories to distance themselves from the flop. No damage control, no public support, just silence and whispers. Pedro's team moved quickly to salvage what they could. His reps booked last-minute interviews. They drafted carefully worded tweets and prepped red carpet appearances to show face. But it was already too late. The narrative had shifted, and the internet wasn't interested in redemption arcs. Hashtags like #NotMyReed and #PedroProblem started trending. Reaction videos mocked his performance, and side-by-side clips comparing him to past Mr. Fantastic actors went viral, with Pedro coming out the loser every time. The once-adoring fanbase turned cold, accusing him of phoning it in and thinking he was too good for the role. Behind the scenes, things were even worse. Streaming deals that had been in development for months were suddenly re-evaluated. High-profile brands pulled their Pedro-centric ad campaigns, and studios that had once fought over his availability were now quietly removing his name from future casting discussions. In just a matter of weeks, Pedro Pascal went from being Hollywood's most lovable leading man to a PR liability. The Fantastic Four flop wasn't just a hit to his reputation, it was a full-on industry detonation. And as the silence grew louder, one question remained. Was this just temporary backlash, or was this the beginning of the end? As the backlash against Fantastic Four intensified, something eerie started happening. Pedro Pascal, once a guaranteed headline, vanished from the conversation. His upcoming roles were no longer promoted. Studio insiders claimed he was being quietly frozen out. There were no official statements, no public fallout, just a subtle shift. Invitations stopped arriving. Meetings were postponed indefinitely. Projects once described as tailor-made for Pedro were suddenly offered to younger, safer, less controversial stars. Rumors began circulating that Disney had internally labeled him a non-priority talent. Even more damning, leaked casting grids for major streaming series showed Pascal's name struck through, replaced by TBD HBO. Once Pedro's strongest ally thanks to The Last of Us began promoting newer faces with a suspicious level of enthusiasm. Netflix reportedly canceled a limited series he'd been attached to for months, citing creative differences, though insiders said it was all about optics. No one wanted to risk another high-profile bomb. In Hollywood, these moves speak louder than press releases. And to those paying attention, it was clear. Pedro Pascal wasn't just unpopular, he was being systematically removed from the A-list conversation. If the studio's silence was deafening, the internet's reaction was explosive. Pedro Pascal, once the darling of TikTok edits and fan compilations, became the punchline of 1,000 memes overnight. Clips from Fantastic Four were turned into cringe montages. Side-by-side comparisons of his stiff delivery versus earlier MCU legends went viral, often captioned with things like, "How did we go from Robert Downey Jr. to this?" Reddit threads titled "Pedro Pascal is overrated" flooded r/movies. YouTube essays dissected his acting choices frame by frame, claiming he coasted on charm and never really had range to begin with. Influencers who once praised his emotional depth now rolled their eyes, branding him a Twitter actor. Great in interviews, mediocre on screen. But the real damage came from his own fans. Longtime stans who defended Pedro through thick and thin began turning on him, expressing disappointment, betrayal, even embarrassment. One viral tweet read, "He went from icon to industry joke in 6 months. Wild." That sentiment wasn't rare, it was everywhere. Pedro didn't respond publicly, no apology, no statement, just a few curated Instagram stories and a sudden drop in activity. And in today's culture, silence doesn't mean mystery, it means guilt. Just when the online backlash seemed to be leveling off, the internet did what it always does. It started digging. And what surfaced made things even worse. Clips from years-old interviews began making the rounds. In one, Pedro dismisses superhero movies as corporate theme park rides. In another, he jokes about how little effort he puts into big-budget roles compared to indie films. At the time, those comments seemed playful, maybe even self-aware. But now, they were ammo. Headlines shifted from disappointment to outrage. Pedro Pascal hated the genre he cashed in on, one article declared. Conservative media figures pounced, calling him another entitled Hollywood hypocrite. Even mainstream outlets joined the pile-on, with think pieces questioning whether Pedro's charm had always masked a quiet disdain for the very fans who made him famous. The worst part? Those clips weren't even hidden. They'd been out there for years, but with the context of Fantastic Four's failure, the narrative flipped. What once seemed quirky now felt smug. What once made Pedro seem grounded now made him look arrogant. And with Marvel executives refusing to defend him, fans bailing out, and press vultures circling overhead, the Pedro Pascal takedown felt less like a reaction and more like a coordinated execution. As the outrage peaked, a new theory began spreading across fandom circles, Reddit threads, and film commentary channels. What if Pedro Pascal wasn't the problem? What if he was the fall guy? Some fans began to dig into the production history of Fantastic Four, and what they uncovered painted a far messier picture. The script had allegedly gone through 4 rewrites before filming even began. The director was rumored to be at odds with Kevin Feige over the tone, and multiple crew members hinted at a chaotic set with last-minute changes, CGI delays, and internal panic that the movie just wasn't working. So why cast Pedro at all? That's where the speculation gets darker. Some believe Marvel chose Pascal not just for his talent or popularity, but as a convenient shield, a beloved actor who could take the spotlight off a crumbling production. If the film bombed, the blame would land on him, not the producers, not the executives. Him. It's the classic Hollywood scapegoat play. Cast someone with mass appeal, then watch them take the fall when things go sideways. And for Pedro, that's exactly what happened. He walked into the MCU at a time when the machine was already breaking down, and the second it did, the machine spit him out without hesitation. Some insiders now claim Marvel was never planning a long-term future with Pascal, that his character was just meant to bridge a phase, not lead it. And when the backlash hit, they cut the cord fast. No statement, no loyalty, just silence. And if all of that's true, then Pedro Pascal didn't just get canceled, he got played. Pedro Pascal didn't start his career trying to be a superstar. He grinded for years in minor roles, built his reputation slowly, and finally broke through by being relatable, vulnerable, and endlessly charismatic. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't scandalous, he was just good. And for a while, that was enough. But Hollywood doesn't reward loyalty. It rewards numbers. And when the numbers stopped adding up, when Fantastic Four tanked and the brand needed someone to blame, Pedro's name was the first on the chopping block. The critics turned, the fans turned, the studios turned. One by one, the pillars that held his career up started collapsing. And yet, through it all, Pedro said nothing. No tearful interview, no damage control podcast tour, just silence. And maybe that's what hurts the most, because behind that silence is a brutal truth. Pedro Pascal may have been one of Hollywood's most beloved stars, but even he wasn't safe from the machine. So now, with no Marvel future, no confirmed projects, and a PR image in free fall, the question becomes chillingly clear. Is this the end of Pedro Pascal's career? Or is this just another beginning? One he'll have to fight tooth and nail for without anyone backing him? Because in Hollywood, you're only as good as your last headline. And Pedro Pascal's last headline was a funeral.